Welcome back to Duke Disrupt 2020 Tech Symposium. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon. I'm your moderator for the second block. My name is Alan. I'm from Taiwan and currently a second-year MBA student at Fuqua School of Business. We will have two keynotes from Microsoft and SoFi respectively and a fintech panel for this block. For those who just joined this Zoom webinar, feel free to leave your questions in the Q&A section below your screen, and we'll invite the speakers to answer those questions after their sharings. So our next speaker will be Harsha Konduri from Microsoft. He'll speak with us about building a resilient future using cloud and AI. So let me introduce Harsha a little bit. He runs Microsoft's cloud and artificial intelligence business for commercial customers in the South US and is responsible for $500 million in cloud revenue. His team enables several Fortune 500 companies leverage Microsoft's cloud and partner with Microsoft on their cloud and AI initiatives. He had experience leading few of the largest strategic commercial cloud deals. Prior to Microsoft, Harsha had experience in Oracle and IBM as well. When he was 24, he co-founded India's first predictive analytics appliance in education space. Meanwhile, Harsha is also a Fuqua alum, graduated in the year of 2014. So let's welcome our speaker, Harsha.
Thanks a lot. I hope you guys can hear me. I'm super excited to be here. First of all, I wanted to start off by thanking Michelle and the Duke Tech Club for inviting me. Great lineup of speakers. I just was able to participate in the fag end of the discussion you guys had. Some great conversations. So like I was introduced, my name is Harsha. I run Microsoft's cloud business in the South region for about 13 states, collectively responsible for about $1 billion of Microsoft's cloud and AI revenue. Just to give you some background on the work that I and my team do so that you understand where I'm coming from through the presentation. My team at Microsoft enables retailers, manufacturers, high-tech companies, sports teams leverage cloud to increase their revenues, grow their margins, and sometimes build sustainable competitive advantage. I think, as far as the topic for why I chose this topic, I think everyone on today's agenda is speaking about disruptive innovation, which is awesome. I wanted to take sort of a different view or different perspective and kind of talk about the importance of actually building resilience in the face of disruption that's not productive, and how you could achieve that with the use of cloud and AI technologies. Now, before I get into the topic, I'll sort of say it costed me almost 2 years. I'm a Fuqua alum. It costed me 2 years and about $200,000 to learn from my management comm class that non-native English speakers can about best articulate around 3 key things in a span of 30 minutes. So I'll tell you. Let me tell you what those 3 things are, and we can get into to the presentation today. The first thing is I'll kind of walk you through the framework of what I see is sort of disruption of companies that I've interacted with, sort of building digital resilience, if you will. The third key area that I'll talk about is like how if we talked about resilience, a framework to understand it, examples, and then we'll go into sections of like how, if I was an MBA student, sort of what would I be focused on and sort of building my core concepts around technology, and how I can best use the rest of the 2 years or 1 year, depending on whether you're a first year or a second year, and how you can use your time to sort of best equip yourself for the real world outside. Like I said, disruptive innovation is great, right? If it happens in, innovation in business models, science and technology, or the way we actually create new markets, make human progress, and achieve economic surplus, and honestly, for humanity in general, leads to better living conditions. However, not all disruption is good. I'm sure all of us are living through, and I heard you guys being some internationally trying to attend a second year MBA, which is extremely challenging. So not all disruption is good. Examples could be, macroeconomic disruption, depression, recession, hyperinflation, things like what we're dealing with from a health standpoint, sometimes with, what the US is going through could potentially lead to regulatory disruption, sort of changes in the economic conditions, social, and sort of almost in certain situations geopolitical. How does sort of a war kind of lead to supply chain disruption, etc. These are all not, they don't contribute to anything positive. So as with human beings and health, resilience is sort of important for businesses as well. It's the mechanism by which you build, the talent pool within the organization, products, services that can respond, recover quickly from unfavorable disruptions, which potentially the unfavorable disruptions could potentially put jobs at risk, customers at risk, shareholder wealth, and the very existence of some of these companies at risk. So what I'm going to talk today is about the digital aspect of this resilience, right? How do you build this digital capacity within an organization to respond and recover quickly from a disruption? Now, the three things that depending on whether you're a product manager or you're selling stuff to customers, irrespective of what role you play within an organization, you have to a good framework to sort of have in thinking about how to respond to a disruptive event is kind of go through these three steps. One is, is my organization equipped to respond to this disruption? Can I recover quickly? And if I'm able to recover quickly and able to survive through the disruption, how do I reimagine a future for my employees, my customers, the technology that I provide, and the operations that I run? How can I reimagine a future that will help me become more immune going forward? Now, the fundamental fabric that it's actually a pretty cliched term, digital transformation, but for any company, any organization, I don't care if it's healthcare, financial services, manufacturing, any organization, for them to succeed in a world with unprecedented constraints, you have to, they will need to empower employees, right? You need to foster a culture where things like hybrid work become a possibility. You have to engage with your customers in fundamentally different ways than you've ever been able to do before. Sometimes virtual, sometimes more intelligent with the use of AI. And you'd also have to transform your own products and services with new business models and optimize operations in a way that you can keep your customers and employees safe and secure. Sorry, that's bad AI there, right there. So how do you take data from one system, use it to optimize the outcome for another? And the way we see this happen within organizations is what we call as tech intensity at Microsoft. So tech intensity comes down to three fundamental things. And if I were to summarize my last 7-8 months of working with customers, I would say the organizations that really succeeded have got this equation really, really bright. The first thing is tech adoption, right? How do you adopt the latest technology and integrate within your organization? In most cases, you don't want to be trying to recreate the wheel of something that's already commoditized by big tech players. The second thing is tech capability. How do you build your own digital capability in a way that you create a culture where all people can participate in the innovation process, are able to learn, test, and then act on their own hypothesis in a way that you can continue to grow the IP within the organization to help you create a competitive advantage. The exponential factor here is trust. Trust comes in two ways. It's about who you partner with in building these capabilities within your organization. What technology do you adopt? But on the flip side, it's also about your employees trusting the technology on the other end. How do they take some of the technology and sort of be reliant on it in the wake of disruption? And it's important that organizations really get these three things really well. Otherwise, it's hard for you to create an organization that's technically intensive, thereby is less resilient to resilient to disruption in general. What I want to do next is kind of talk to you about three specific customer examples, and then I'll sort of close it out with things that I think are relevant for MBA students. The first thing that I'll talk about is in 2016, I caught a call from the general manager at Hendrick Motorsports. The team actually won the championship for 2 consecutive years at that point. And they say, hey, how do I create a sustainable competitive advantage? And they wanted to build this AI-driven decision-making system that would augment the intelligence that crew chiefs had. And most of these crew chiefs, these are like managers for if you're a soccer guy, if you're coaches, like if you're a football guy, they get paid more than $1 million. Outcomes of these races are extremely dependent on the strategy that crew chiefs come out with. And the strategy itself is a factor of largely three variables, right? What is the state of the race? Condition of the race in general, like the weather, yellow flag, red flag, etc. The second thing that drives it is, do I have enough fuel left in the tank at any point during the race? And the third thing that drives this is, am I going to run out of, will the tires last until my next pit stop? The reason these are like three critical variables are for them to understand is that decides when they need to take a pit stop. And that pretty much sums up what a crew chief is there. And rest of it is all dependent on the driver, how he drives the car, etc. Now, to be able to NASCAR doesn't allow for fuel sensors to be placed inside the car. To be able to take this equation and say, hey, I've worked on these models for the last 10 years. It's all a mental model that I have, and to be able to rely on technology and say, hey, I'm going to make these really critical calls based on an AI model that I'm just implementing. It's a huge mind shift. Right? It's not just about taking the models, it's also about trusting the models and basically making critical judgment calls on race day to be able to create that sustainable competitive advantage over your peers. The reason why this example is a great one is they started thinking about this in 2016. They implemented in 2017. Jimmy Johnson, I think, won that year's championship race. Today, if you think about the pandemic, most of the crew chiefs can actually operate without actually going to the racetrack, because historically they looked at what was going on in the race. They've basically digitized the entire race into that dashboard that you see. Everything about every variable that you need about the race and to make a call is all visible in that dashboard. It's astonishing to me how a legacy sport like NASCAR transformed itself using digital technology to, again, be part of this digital future. The second example that I want to talk to you guys about is ThyssenKrupp. ThyssenKrupp wanted to basically disrupt themselves, and they disrupt their own product and services sales model. And they basically came to Microsoft and said, hey, we want to envision a future where we are charging our customers not when the elevator is actually sold, but actually when customers actually ride the elevator. So if you think about an elevator or an escalator manufacturing company, their model is you sell an asset, you service the asset, you monetize at both of those touch points. What they said is, how do I digitize the elevator to a point where now I can measure how many elevator rides are being taken? The second thing is I ask my commercial real estate customers or residential real estate customers to pay me when somebody actually uses an elevator, not at a point where they actually call me for a service. So it shifts the equation quite a bit, because now the onus is on ThyssenKrupp to make sure the elevator is running, because otherwise it's a lost revenue opportunity. Again, the critical thing here is they've disrupted their own business model to make them more sustainable in the long term. to be able to take, anything mechanical would eventually fail. That's the law of physics. What they said, instead of making money on a service call, they said, let's predict when an elevator would fail, and monitor these elevators centrally, and basically dispatch technicians prior to an elevator failure, so somebody can go fix these elevators. So you can continue to charge customers for the number of elevator rides that they take. The other great thing about this is, with the huge skills gap that ThyssenKrupp experienced in just not having people with trade skills in the US, one of the fundamental things that they tried to do is, how do I not only predict failure, can I actually diagnose what the problem is, so I can fast track a service technician showing up at at a service location and help him be better at repairing the elevator in a way that they've never been able to do before. So preventing failure, if it fails or if it needs servicing, how do I preemptively coach the guy that shows up at servicing an elevator? Again, you think about a fundamentally very mechanical sort of a process, legacy business model that they've disrupted using things like IoT. I'll play a video because I think it's important for you guys to see
very different kinds of ways. And arrives at he has the relevant possible and puts on his HoloLens and looks at the elevator. He sees the historical notes first, telling him what has actually happened with this elevator before. This way he has all relevant information right there without having to look at it, saving a lot of time, stress, and effort. On his virtual desktop, he gets all necessary information about the task orders he has to carry out with the latest safety alerts for that elevator. He pulls on a 3D, the replication of that part, then he changes into an exploded view so that he can actually see which part is causing the problem. Completely new and a major advantage of the HoloLens is that the technician is hands-free. One of the most important capabilities with HoloLens is to trigger a remote call to a subject matter expert.
Call Heather.
Hey Jeff, how you doing?
I'm replacing a door board out here, but I kind of want you to check a couple things out.
Okay, let me take a look. The JP3 is in the right position and your motor leads are disconnected, so you're good to go.
The result, time saving and less stress for the technician.
You get the idea. The final example that I want to talk to you about is very recent, and how technology helped independent, disparate companies come together to actually build and participate in the ventilator UK ventilator challenge. UK as a country actually needed about 15,000 ventilators during the recent pandemic. And as a country, they were producing about 800 ventilators in a year, and so they needed to fast track this to something that would have taken them 6 months to almost 1 day. And for this to happen, they needed a collaboration across different manufacturers, companies that have ventilator models, and how they could put together a consortium of independent players that could use technology to reduce something that is the world has never seen before. How do you take something that takes 6 months to 1 day without changing any of the equation with the supply side of the of things, and how do you accelerate that production life cycle? So, digital technology actually played a critical role in sort of helping, UK respond to the pandemic disruption, which is what the digital technology helped them do is for them to order parts to build the ventilators, to construct them at sites that are dispersed across the country, for technologies like mixed reality to come and play a role in educating technicians who have never historically worked on a ventilator. As an example, in this particular scenario, about 2,500 engineers who had spent their careers building products such as cars had to come together and switch to actually assembling medical equipment overnight. And in order for them to be able to do this, they needed to interact with people who had knowledge of actually building ventilators. Penlon is one such company that actually built ventilators. So they needed to rely on a scarce commodity of experts and had to use technology to bridge the gap between, someone who manufactured cars to actually someone who built ventilators. So, what was very interesting is about, in a span of, I think, 58 days, these guys made about 15,000 ventilators through the ventilator challenge with UK. And that could not have been possible without them being able to use technology to bring together all the constituents across the guys who orders the parts to guys who assembles the parts, this, a logistics provider like DHL. All of this needed to work, and that needed to come together really quick. Again, short sort of shows you how it's important for not only the tech capability, but also have adoption within the supply chain, and sometimes put together teams that are pretty hybrid and disparate, and bring those guys together to solve an immediate problem like the pandemic. I'll actually play a video to show you some of the experiences that the team talks about, so you guys can relate to.
A couple of weeks out before lockdown, people said this is.
And share your document, and both of you then can actually, fit. Different companies have completely disappeared.
We had started to consider how on earth we could train lots of people in parallel to the production happening at both Smiths and Penlon.
We quickly realised that the Microsoft HoloLens 2s could be used with the remote assist capability in order to get that expertise and knowledge out of these guys that have been building ventilators for many, many years. The remote assist capability has been invaluable.
At the moment, I can tell you we are meeting the demand signals with what we're supplying. It looks like we didn't end up with this horror story of people queuing up outside of hospital being unable to get the equipment they needed.
The enthusiasm and the dedication and the amount of work that has gone into the UK Ventilator Challenge has been absolutely amazing.
We've achieved an enormous amount in an incredibly short space of time. Pulling that off with that sort of depth of camaraderie has just been extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary.
So this might be familiar to a lot of people. Like, it's the employment report from last year's Fuqua employment. Irrespective of the domain, the job function, the role, the level, the pay, the industry, all of you need to be extremely comfortable with tech-enabled experiences for your customers, the product that you build. Classes that you go to that I think we talked, it was mentioned about innovation. Concepts like artificial intelligence, IoT, machine learning, these are extremely relevant for your future. If you're an investment banker, it may not be the first thing that you'd work on after you sign up for your internship or your full-time offer. But at some point when you're putting together deals, or you need to make a judgment call if the company has the necessary competitive advantage with digital technology. If you're a general manager, if you're taking a general manager role within a CPG company, you need to be thinking about how you could forecast demand within stores, how you could digitize the manufacturing and a plant where you can get process improvement, product quality improvement. I can go on and on and on. Being digitally savvy and deeply understanding the role that technology can play is more paramount than when I was at Fuqua 6 or 7 years ago. I cannot find an executive. And I interact with a lot of CEOs, CIOs, CDOs, COOs, all of them being able to sort of digitally enable their process, their products, their employees is right front and center. And it's almost impossible not to be successful without having a deep understanding of how tech sort of enables and impacts every aspect of our everyday commercial world, and that's what me and my team do. And so, I mean, in summary, what I would say is, if I'm an MBA student, I would really think through, when you go through case studies, etc. Think about, if you were you had an external disruption, how do you respond? Think about how a company could have recovered from it with the help of digital technology, and then help reimagine the future with digital technology again. And I'm sort of on my time, so I appreciate everybody listening to me. I'm happy to take a couple of questions if there are any.
Yeah, thanks Harsha for your sharing. I think we're at time right now, so probably we won't have time for any questions. But the example of cross industries collaboration are really exciting, and we hope to see more Microsoft initiative with other players in other industries as well. So thanks a lot for your sharing again, and hope everything is good on your end. Good luck and stay safe.